Hello and welcome to Your Property Podcast. My name is Michelle Kearns, your host for today, and today is the 5th of August 2021, and with us we have got Kim Opszala. Hi Kim.
Hi Michelle, how are you?
Great, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. So a bit about Kim. Kim is a multi-award-winning corporate solicitor turned property investor. Kim used a mixed strategy approach of buy, refurbish, refinance, purchase lease options, and rent to replace her full-time income in less than 2 years. She is passionate about helping others do the same now. And Kim is also a mum to a toddler, a charity trustee, and more recently, a camper van enthusiast. So we have got lots to get into. I'm really looking forward to today. I know it's been on the list for a while to speak to you, so it's a great opportunity. You are very prominent in the property education world, and really great on your social media, posting about what you do and what you're up to. So tell us, for people who don't know who you are, your bit of background about obviously being a solicitor, and I suppose how that's helped you step into the property world, from the other side, if you like. So you've got wearing lots of hats these days.
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on, Michelle. I qualified as a solicitor back in 2012, and I specialise in corporate law. So anything to do with joint ventures, share purchases, business purchases, that sort of thing. And was working full time, sort of climbing my way up the corporate ladder. And like a lot of people, just became a bit fed up with long hours, stressful working conditions, and sort of no end in sight, really. The higher up the ladder I would work, the more hours I would work, the more stress I would have. And I just kind of decided that wasn't the path that I wanted to go on, and that I wanted, at some point to have a family, and I wanted more time freedom. And that's really what started us on the journey of looking into other ways to supplement your income, and eventually replace your income. And property has always been something I'm interested in. Actually bought my first property to live in at 18, so I was quite young. This was, I'm going to give away my age, but it was back in the boom years. And so made a lot of money very quickly, and sort of really saw the power of investing in property at that time, even though it was for my own house. And then years later, after going to university and everything else, it was something that had always been in the back of my mind to do.
And when was it? When did that click for you that actually investing in property, that it was something that you could do yourself personally? Because a lot of people, they're in the corporate world and they've got their own house, or a couple of buy-to-lets, investment houses, for example, but they actually, even though they've got an interest in property and they can see the advantage, they just don't ever take that step into looking into it any further and then take action.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it was I suppose it was a turning point in my career, where it was kind of like, do I go for the next promotion? Right. It was very busy at the time, and it just started to affect my health mentally, physically. And I think you get to a sort of tip of the iceberg point. And that's when I started looking into it. And I know it's going to sound cliche, but we read Rich Dad Poor Dad on holiday, on a beach, all inclusive somewhere, the only holiday we would have that year. And it was just a mindset shift after reading that book. All of my coaching clients, I'm like, you have to, if they haven't read it, you need to read it, because it is a real mindset shift in terms of debt. I went from overpaying on my mortgage to being like, well, actually, I could use that money to give me an asset that gives me money back. So yeah, that sort of changed my mindset a lot. And straight off the back of reading that, we invested with someone who was investing locally on I suppose it's an earn and learn, it would be known as now. So we started investing with them. And so we saw what they did live, we got to go to their projects, and it was HMOs. And so it just seemed to fit really well. Our actual first buy to let wasn't a HMO, it was a block of flats. But it's a similar concept. I know that you do that strategy as well. So you're buying a block and getting multiple income streams from it. And it worked really well. And I suppose it went from being, we'll do one of those every couple of years to actually, no, I want to replace my income a lot faster. I need to find other ways. Exactly. And so that's when we started looking at more creative strategies, educating ourselves further in different ways of using property.
So that first person that you invested with, you kind of said that in passing a bit casually. Okay, we were sitting on the beach one day, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then the next minute you investing with somebody. So how did you come across that person and investing with anyone, whether that's investing for a weekend seminar or larger sums of money? What was it about that person who that you felt comfortable with in terms of not just who they were, but actually where the money was going, the deal, and what they were offering? And so I suppose, how did you come across that person, and did you choose them specifically because that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was a friend of a friend who I sort of had met a few times socially. And they had mentioned that they were in property, and they were very active on social media about property. So I was able to do quite a lot of due diligence on what they were up to, what they were doing. The fact that they were local helped. And we met up a couple of times to talk business and potentially investing with them. Obviously, as a solicitor, I am very risk averse. I wouldn't just invest with anyone.
I'm sure.
So there were a lot of meetings. We saw sites, and we just thought that the quickest way to learn would be kind of on the job, as it were, and being able to go and visit projects and pick up the phone if we had any questions was really helpful. And then after that, we then decided to go down the formal education route, because that person was doing one strategy, and actually we wanted to know all the different strategies so that we could maximise the pot of cash that we had.
So how long was it between when you invested with that person originally and when you bought your first property? Did you do all strategies first and then pick one, or was it just a case of your first property just happened to come up?
Yeah, so the first property we were looking for, it was more of a buy-to-let property, and we came across the block of flats and saw how well it worked. It's in Birmingham, where I'm from. Knew the area really well, so that just worked. It wasn't, from a risk averse point of view, it just worked all day long on paper. It stacked really well, so we went straight into that deal, and that was sort of probably 6-7 months after we'd started investing. It wasn't the same strategy as the investor, but I suppose it gave us that confidence in property as a means of supplementing your income. And then I think it was probably 12 to 18 months later that we enrolled on a more formal program. I say I enrolled on the program, but my husband invests. We invest together in our business, Como Properties.
And so obviously, I think there's such a difference, isn't there, between just standard single lets and the concept of Rich Dad Poor Dad to to just be investing and leveraging your debt and that kind of thing, to the property education world, which is just a world on its own, really. All these unknown strategies. So was that the first investor that you did the earn and learn with? Were they part of that education world? Did they point you in that direction, or was it just by chance through Googling and in social media that you came across all these other strategies?
Yeah, I mean, they were active in the sort of education sector, but not in the same sector of the education that I went through, if that makes sense. But I was aware of it. You have these 1-day free events, the 3-day weekends. So for us, I kind of had decided that in order to do this, I would need to invest in myself, invest in my education. And so the next step for me was networking with different companies, different networking events, and doing my due diligence on the courses. For me, a big part of it was morals. And, you hear it, the property education sector has a bit of a bad reputation, and actually there's a lot of really good providers out there, but there are people that teach all sorts of strategies that, yes, they might benefit you as an investor, but they don't benefit the seller. And for me, it was important that there was that balance, the win-win. Yeah, so that narrowed down the providers, shall we say?
I'm sure. So you started in the education world, but you're still working full time at this point, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So I was working full time until I had my son. So worked full time, but I did change my role slightly. So I was working in private practice, which means in large law firms, which is it's hard work. It can be long hours. You've got high targets, that sort of thing. And I actually switched to a contractor role. So I was working on a contract basis. So it was for a set period of time, but it was still full time. I was going from one contract to another.
And in terms of picking your strategy then, because obviously I suppose the short term goal was to replace that salary. So your investment choices then, were they obviously just high cash flowing in the quickest amount of time, regardless of the strategy or regardless of the property? And did you have like a clear plan in place, with like a figure in mind that you were aiming for, or did it just sort of evolve over time?
No, yeah, we did. We had a clear figure that we wanted to get to, and a process of elimination through the different strategies. HMOs worked really well for us. Obviously, that's the first person that we invested with. That's what they did. So we were very familiar with the model locally. But we were also conscious of the fact that we had a certain amount of money. So the mixed strategy approach really worked well, because that pot of cash just went so much further than it would if we were just concentrating on buying. At that point, I think it'd be fair to say we didn't have the confidence to raise private finance. And I think a lot of people are the same when they first start out. Now, most of our deals involve private finance, and our most recent one was bought cash solely through angel investors. But it takes time to get to that point. And at the start, we had a set amount of money. And by doing the mixture of rent-to-rent lease options and buying, we were able to actually acquire control of or purchase of a number of properties, which you wouldn't be able to do if you stuck to one of those strategies.
I think the challenge about the high cash flowing strategies, and certainly sort of the rent to rent HMO, is that although they're the most obvious strategies for replacing your income quickly, actually if you're in a full-time corporate job, they're the most work intensive, certainly up front in setting them up. So how did you manage that balance between having the full-time job, looking to start a family, and and then suddenly having all of this extra, basically a second job?
You use the word balance, and I would say for about 12-18 months there was no balance. I was working all day and then working on property all night. But we had a big reason why. For me, I just really had to get out of the day job. And I think if your reason why is big enough, you kind of do what you have to do. It wasn't easy, we didn't see a lot of family and friends for that period because we were just working around the clock, but it did pay off. And we're now at a point where I work when I want to. At the moment I'm not working, I'm full-time in property. And I just had to make sacrifices at that point to get to the point that I'm at now. And I was happy to do that. But it is, I'm not going to gloss over it and say, oh, it's fine. Yeah. It was hard work to juggle both.
And it's knowing when do you get to that point where actually you can either reduce your hours at work or leave, which is obviously the main goal. But, because with HMOs and rent rents, the cash flow, it's coming in, but then it's also going out and you're looking at the next project and the next project.
Yeah.
So how did you juggle that? And for some people, you've got the certainty of that day job, the income coming in, being able to, get mortgages, etc.
Yeah.
So did you what did you do in your case? Because I know a lot of people actually getting to the point where they can replace their income through property. It might just be enough to say, I've got the choice whether to leave or not. I've got the choice whether to, and they don't actually need to leave.
Yeah. absolutely.
They actually might choose to stay for all those other reasons I've mentioned. So how did it work in your case?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to make, because quite often we get asked, well, when's Mike going to give up his job? And Mike likes his job, and there's no intention for him to leave his job. He's dropped a day at work, so he works 4 days. But ultimately, we didn't get into this because he was like me, he wanted to get out of the day job. And so, yeah, it does get to a point where you think, where do we stop effectively? For us, we had a figure in mind at the point that I could step away from my job. It coincided nicely with maternity leave. So I then had a period of, I was still getting paid, but I was ultimately in property, obviously managing a newborn baby as well. And then, my maternity leave coincided with COVID as well. So I ended up taking quite a long time off. But I have worked since going into property full time. I was offered a contract that was, really well paid. It was for 4 months. And I just thought, I can work for 4 months. And it's like you say, it is nice to have a salary. It's great for mortgages. It's great to just take the money that comes in from the property then goes back into the property instead of paying for expenses. So when opportunities like that come up, I don't turn them down. It's not sort of like I have to full time be in property. But the key for me was having the flexibility, like you say. If I didn't want to do that contract, I could say no. It was a bonus to do it. And I think, well, what I see a lot especially in my career, is almost people trapped. They don't have any choices. They can't say, I need a couple of months off. We love to travel. And this summer is very much about traveling and things like that. And ultimately, when you're working full time, it's difficult to do that. So I think for us, it was important to be able to make those choices. And the mixed strategy approach and property effectively has given us that. Yeah.
And I suppose a lot of, there's the property world and understanding about HMOs and legislation, and then there's the business world, isn't there, where you're working on the business and you're setting the systems up. And from what I know of you already, I know you've been really keen on setting up those systems, and you've got you work with virtual assistants as well, and it's about actually being really smart, as early as possible with setting that up, so you don't just end up with another job at the end. You leave the day job that you wanted to leave, and then suddenly you're doing full time, running around after tenants. So what, in terms of systems and being able to make sure that you had that time flexibility, what systems did you set up, and how did that work with working with other people?
I think that is so important. It's something that I'm quite passionate about. I write articles about outsourcing, because I definitely found I outsourced really early. As soon as we got our first rent-to-rent deal, we got the VA on board, because when you're working full time, I think it's a necessity. You cannot build a property business and work full time, and especially not in the sort of hours that I was doing, and still grow whilst you're doing all the admin that comes with running a HMO. Something has to give, and outsourcing, particularly to a virtual assistant early on, is very easy to do, and it just pays in dividends. So yeah, it's something that I'm always telling clients, get, because at the start it's difficult. You think, oh, what am I going to give them? But as you know yourself, it just grows. There's just so much they can do and take off your hands. And it's the stuff that you don't really want to do and that you don't do very well as well. So
you always find something.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it is really important. So as well as a VA, in the past we've gone between 1 or 2 VAs, depending on the role at the time. If we're looking for a creative side, so helping with the social media, website, we tend to have a separate VA for that. And we always have an admin VA that helps with we self-manage our properties. So tenant management, compliance certificates, email management, calendar management, everything like that. The admin VA does. And then a lettings manager. So we have someone who does the viewings and the check-ins and the check-outs. So having those people in place just really takes a lot of the time involved in the day-to-day management of HMOs off our plate, and leaves us to look for the next deals, and deal with the bigger stuff, I suppose.
Yeah. And how did that work at the beginning then? Because, getting your first rent-to-rent, first HMO or deal, whatever is enough going on, so if you've got a full-time job, but actually employing a virtual assistant and training them in the process that, especially rent-to-rent, a lot of the margin really is in you or your VA, whoever, in essentially you doing that admin. So learning everything from scratch, did you learn with them? Or was it a case of you did a couple, got used to it, and then brought them, alongside you?
I suppose there was an element of us learning with them. I'd already got the first HMO and got it set up. So as I did that, I was writing checklists on, things that I had to do at the start, like utilities and certificates and things that we needed to get from a landlord in a rent-to-rent. And then you can copy that across to a purchase. There's obviously differences. So I've always kind of kept a list of what I was doing. But when the VA came on board, it became a lot more professional. So we now have an ops manual where every process that we do, it's always a work in progress, but every process is in the ops manual. And we have videos that talk you through, things like how to update the gas safety certificate. I have a video where I talk through it. So it's definitely evolved, but at the start it was more probably just the day-to-day admin, which didn't need as much of the training as such. And I suppose we were both learning at the same time, but you become aware that actually if another VA comes along, you don't want to have to go through that training process again. So having an ops manual or video instructions is key, so that you're not having to repeatedly retrain and you can update them very easily. If you change a system or you tweak it to make it more effective, it's very easy to do if you've got a process in place already.
Sounds like you've been very efficient from the beginning, and not many people would have started that process, the systems alone, let alone bringing somebody else in as an assistant to work with them. So it sounds very slick, I have to say.
I don't know if it was in reality.
in hindsight, was there anything that you thought, oh, I wish I'd have done that, or that was something I missed?
Yeah, I mean, there were loads of things where I thought I'd given clear instructions on something and obviously hadn't. And that's when you then start thinking, right, we need a written instruction here or a video, and then nothing can get lost in translation. But I think for me, I couldn't grow without help. So it was kind of like, to be honest, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I felt like the only way I was going to get another deal was if I got a VA. And yes, there is a time investment at the start, but I've always just seen it as a no-brainer. I think when you work, even they can even help with like life admin, stuff to do in your own home, organising me and Mike and now our little one. So yeah, I think I just have always seen that, and I get that a lot of people, they get 2-3 years, sometimes 10 years down the line, they've grown a portfolio and they say, right, now I need help. And that is really difficult. So I am glad that I kind of made the mistakes at the start and learned as I went. And it meant that now we do have great systems. And it means that if a VA leaves or if they're off sick, actually it's not the end of the world. We have stuff in the background that means it can continue.
So moving over to your, obviously, your career, your background as a solicitor, how has that shaped what you do into, obviously you mentioned before about being really keen on due diligence, as you would expect, but how does that feature in your interactions with investors, with landlords, etc.? And I guess they're transferable skills that you'll be holding on to long term as well. So be a lot of credibility when speaking with people.
Yeah, I think there's credibility, but people don't tend to like solicitors. So it has its plus and its minuses. I'm always quick to say I'm not a property solicitor because they seem to get the most stick in the profession. But yeah, no, it's a credibility thing. I think as a practicing solicitor, and that's one of the reasons that I continue to work even for a few months of the year, is that I keep my practicing certificate. It's that you have morals and professional standards to uphold. So I don't lend money that I know I can't pay back. I don't do dodgy deals that will work out really well for me but not for other people, because I could actually lose my practicing certificate and my livelihood. And I think that helps in credibility, definitely. But also just the skills that you have. Like, I'm not scared of paperwork, of long contracts, which I know a lot of people hate. For me, I'm quite confident in dealing with those and negotiating them. And I suppose explaining legal terminology and paperwork in an easy way. I've had to do it for years. And I think that's why I've ended up doing some of the more creative deals, because I understand how they work and I can explain that to a vendor, which always helps.
So what's next then? It sounds like, everything's been working according to plan. I'm sure there's been lots of bumps and things along the way, no doubt. But, where are you up to now? Because obviously, I think for a lot of people, what gets them to that first goal is not necessarily what they need to continue or grow. Obviously, the first goal was to replace your income, but then actually once you've got the portfolio up and running, the cash is coming in, you don't necessarily look for the same strategies. Some people do and some people hone in, but what's next?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've acquired 2 more HMOs this year, and we're still going through the refurbishment of one of them. And we've bought a very old building. Every day there's a call from the builder with something new. So I'm not going to gloss over them and pretend that HMOs and, property generally isn't easy. It is hard work. And I've been quite successful in my journey, but it has been a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of hard work to get there. And with that in mind, we are looking to kind of slow down a bit. We've done 2 this year, and if we could get a third, that would be fab, but we're not actively marketing. We tend to use direct to vendor strategies. So all of our deals since 2018 have been direct to vendor. But at the moment we're not marketing, and if the right deal comes up, we'll do it. But I think we had our son just before lockdown, and last year was a write-off. You mentioned the camper van. So basically at the moment we're just, every weekend is a 4-day weekend, and we're traveling around in the van. So yeah, it's more about family time whilst our son's not at school, just being able to go away. Obviously not abroad at the moment, it's just a nightmare. But that's our focus. And it's funny because I think there is a lot of pressure, perhaps in social media or just in the property world. It's like, what's your next deal? What's your pipeline? And actually we're at a point where we're kind of like, if we get another one, fine, but we're not looking to do 5 more deals this year. And we are looking at diversifying. Last year, at the beginning of last year, we only had professional lets, single lets and HMOs. Last year, we diversified to students, and that's what we've continued to do this year. But we are looking to do more single lets and flips. If we could get more title split, freehold opportunities, that would be fantastic. But I think next year, I'd be surprised if we do any more HMOs. Actually saying that, we are going to exercise a lease option next year, which is a HMO. So technically, we will get 1 HMO next year, but it's in our control at the moment anyway. So yeah, I think it will be slower growth. When you've got a big goal in mind and you reach that, it's kind of like you start to reassess, like you say, what are you looking for over the next few years, and it's more about steady growth and the lower maintenance strategy, so we say, in terms of management.
I think it was one of the podcast guests who said something about working hard to keep things simple. No, that really stuck with me, and I thought, it's you've got to kind of constantly remember why you were doing it in the first place. And for some people, the deals are really exciting, and they love the process of it, and that's great. And there is an element I do love that as well. But maybe it just comes down to you've got a choice. If a fantastic opportunity comes up, then why not go for it?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got that space to attract those opportunities and look at them, because you're not kind of heading the next HMO deal or whatever.
That's it. It was always about time freedom for us, and I think we did get to a stage where we're like, where's the next deal, and we actually, COVID helped us to stop and be like, well, actually we've hit our target, we're just on this sort of hamster wheel of more deals. And it gave us the opportunity to take a step back and say, well, we want to travel more, we want more time freedom, and ultimately the more HMOs that you get, it is more management if you're self-managing like we do. So there has to be that balance, and we've got the 3 single lets in the block of flats in the Midlands, and it's just the management time in comparison to even a small HMO is you can't even compare the two. We don't hear from the tenants, you know, they've been there for years. So they're single lets, they're not as sexy on social media, but they do have amazing benefits as well. And I think we're looking to sort of supplement so that the portfolio is a bit more balanced in terms of that.
Yeah, and then the diversification as well.
Exactly.
It helps you sleep at night. I think you haven't got all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we do invest in a few areas as well for that reason. I suppose I am, when you put it all on paper, I'm very risk averse. We've got different strategies, different areas, but it definitely helps. You don't want to have, well, personally, I wouldn't want to have 10 student HMOs in one area, because ultimately, you know, if something happens at the university, or you are a little bit stuck. So I've always got sort of plan B in the back of my mind as well. But there's just so many fantastic property strategies out there. It's difficult, isn't it? Especially, I would say, when you first get into education. You know, I think I went from SA to commercial to residential. So, you know, I've probably looked into all the different strategies because they all sound fantastic, but you do have to be focused and think, what's my end goal? What's going to get me there? And then when you get there, you can start to think, oh, I might try a little SA in an area that I like, and you can start to look into that.
Yeah, it definitely can be a bit overwhelming and exciting at the same time. But, you know, you're just getting started. And as you've done it there, it's great to kind of have that overview of your journey, because hopefully people can see that actually, you know, you put a stake in the ground, you got started, and then from there, that went on to the next deal and the next deal. So maybe that first one of the block of flats you weren't specifically looking for, but it came up, it stacked, it met your criteria of you know what you were looking to achieve in your short-term goal, and then that leads on to the next one, and then here we are years later, and I say years, but you know it's phenomenal what you've achieved in such a short amount of time. So really inspiring story, and it's been great to hear. And you've actually got an article in the latest YPM magazine, which is exciting, so people can check that out as well. And where's the best place for people to follow you on social media?
Yes, yeah. So at Como, Komo Properties on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. If you go onto my Instagram profile, I've got a link tree, and you can connect with me on all the different platforms through that.
You're everywhere, basically.
Yeah, I am. I'm everywhere.
It's all good. It's all good. Keep us up to date. Well, we'll put those into the show notes as well, so people can follow you there. So thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to having you back in the future and seeing where you're up to.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, take care, Kim.
And you.
Thanks everyone for listening. If you are not yet a subscriber to the magazine, then please click the link in the show notes as well for your free first copy. And we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.